My daughter asked me to give up being her mother so that her wealthy biological mother could adopt her. Years later, she comes back because she needs my money, and apparently I owe it to her. To start, I'm sincerely grateful that my daughter, Tara, has an excellent relationship with her stepmom, Donnie. For some context, my husband, Mark, and I never had a good relationship. We fell in love very young and got married because we thought it was the right thing to do when I got pregnant with Tara. Although Mark tried to be a good father, he was extremely lazy. He never helped with Tara in any meaningful way. I was the one feeding her, changing her diapers, staying up all night until she finally slept, bathing her, and taking her out for walks. Mark was the fun dad who'd just come home and spend an hour with the baby, while I was busy cooking meals or cleaning up in the kitchen. Then, he'd have dinner and retreat to his study to play video games. If I ever asked him to help around the house or with Tara, he'd say that was women's work and that it was God's plan that I handle it. This led to disagreements where I'd beg him to help because I was completely exhausted, but he'd flatly refuse. Once, I was so sick I could barely move, so I pleaded with him to please look after Tara so I could rest and recover. He started arguing with me, calling me lazy and saying that his own mother had never asked for his help. I was furious because, after all, he was Tara's father too, but he never lifted a finger. I yelled that if he didn't help, I'd pack my bags and leave, which confused him a bit. He grumbled, but in the end, he took time off to care for Tara so I could get a few hours of sleep. When my maternity leave was about to end, I asked my mom to watch Tara during my work hours, and she gladly agreed. Mark's mother never offered to help, but that was fine with me. Mark didn't like that I returned to work, since he'd been trying for so long to have me be a full-time housewife, but I always refused. Looking back, I'm grateful I didn't quit my job because Mark lost his when his company downsized. That came as a shock to him and other employees who were fired. When he told me, I nearly panicked because we needed the money for household expenses and to care for Tara. But I knew that if I panicked, he'd just get even more anxious. So, I assured him I would cover all the expenses until we got back on our feet. Since I had no job at the time, I asked Mark to look after Tara so my mom could get a break from the caregiving. At first, Mark didn't want to, but eventually he agreed. Every day, I'd come home to find Mark sitting on the same spot on the couch, playing video games, while Tara played on the floor nearby. Basic needs like meals and baths were neglected, and I often returned to find Tara hungry and unattended. This naturally made me angry. On one hand, I had to work hard to support our family on my own, and on the other, I felt guilty that my daughter was being neglected. I remember during that period we fought a lot, with Mark saying he was trying to find a job but never even going to interviews. 6 months into staying home, Mark told me he wanted to take a business course. He'd always wanted to start his own business, but I just didn't think it was the right time because I wanted him to secure a stable job for now. Apparently, he'd already discussed it with his parents, who were willing to pay his college fees. I was the last to know, as if it didn't mean anything to him as my partner. I think that should have been my moment to leave, but like a fool who refuses to give up, I stayed, working and taking care of Tara. Mark went back to studying, eventually graduated, and started his own business. He did well and began hiring people. That's when Donnie came into his life. She was a cheerful young woman fresh out of college, hired to be his personal assistant. Mark and Donnie spent hours together, but I never thought anything of it. The idea that he was cheating never even crossed my mind. However, Mark began introducing Tara to Donnie every time he took her to his office, insisting that Tara and Donnie spend time together. That made me suspicious. I asked Mark directly if there was anything going on between him and Donnie, but he vehemently denied it, telling me I was overthinking things. I let it go until one day a friend called and told me she saw Donnie and Mark sitting in a cafe, holding hands. My friend didn't know who Donnie was, but based on her description of the woman with Mark, I knew it had to be her. Not only was I embarrassed at the thought of my husband cheating, but I also knew that now everyone would find out. That night, I insisted that Mark invite Donnie over for dinner so that I could meet her, since she worked for him. He had no idea that I now had proof of his indiscretions. During dinner, I told him directly that I was tired of the two of them hiding things behind my back and that I knew everything. Mark was stunned, while Donnie turned pale. I said I didn't care if she was sleeping with my husband because, at this point, nothing could save our marriage. Mark and Donnie exchanged looks, and eventually she confessed that she was in love with him. She continued saying that she never wanted any of this to happen and that she regretted it all. However, Mark asked me why I had invited Donnie if he already knew everything, and he started saying I had no right to embarrass them. He claimed that I should have kept him satisfied, but I never did because I was always too busy trying to be independent. I shook my head and reminded him how my job put food on the table while he was unemployed, even when he was studying. Mark argued that I could have quit my job once his business was doing well, but I told him I couldn't risk it, and that we both needed steady jobs for our future. I was so angry at him for trying to find an excuse to divorce me, so I kept telling him that I'd never have neglected him or Tara, and that I did all the household chores regardless of my work. He kept trying to blame me, but I ignored him. I looked at Donnie, wished her luck, and excused myself from the table. I knew exactly what I had to do now. Somehow, Mark was freed from the burden of finding an excuse for divorce. Yes, I used to be in love with him, but ever since Tara came along, we just became roommates living under the same roof. In any case, I was doing most of the work around the house, so I had nothing to lose by leaving him. I packed my bags along with Tara's while Mark kept asking what I was doing. I told him I was leaving and that I'd send him the divorce papers soon. He tried to argue, saying that I was being too cold and that we should take a moment to think it over, but I didn't believe there was anything left to consider. I'd had enough and went to stay with my parents for a while. If you're wondering whether his parents ever reached out to comfort me, you're wrong. They never said a word to my ex for breaking up the family. I only later discovered why. You see, Donnie wasn't just young. She came from a wealthy family, and by marrying her, Mark would be getting a slice of that money. Honestly, I didn't care about any of that. My only goal was to ensure that Mark and I could be good co-parents for Tara. From the start, Donnie didn't seem like a bad person, so I hoped she could also be a good stepmother to my daughter. During the divorce, I ended up with half of my husband's assets, a significant amount, as his business was bringing in 6 figures. I bought a place for Tara and me. Mark and I had joint custody. I had Tara from Monday through Friday, and he had her from Friday afternoon until Monday morning, when he'd drop her off at school. After our divorce, he immediately allowed Donnie to move in with him. Tara would come home and tell me how Donnie and Mark would take her out to fancy restaurants or amusement parks. She was always so excited to see them on weekends. At first, I didn't notice anything unusual, but eventually, my daughter began distancing herself more and more from me. I was the one who made sure she finished her homework and taught her how to do chores like washing her own dishes or folding her clothes, and she hated that. I was always the one making sure she ate healthy food and refused to order McDonald's every day. She always insisted on receiving expensive gifts, which didn't seem appropriate for a child. Mark and Donnie, on the other hand, were the fun parents who took her everywhere, and she spent her weekends doing nothing but watching TV or eating fancy food. She would often tell me how fun it was with them, and if I didn't listen, she'd say hurtful things like she wished she could live only with them. That broke my heart, but she was just a kid, so I let it go. When Tara was 12, Donnie got pregnant with twins. Tara was really anxious during that time and kept asking me if Mark still loved her. I had to reassure her over and over that her father loved her no matter what. Her anxiety grew so severe that I had to talk to Mark about it. Eventually, he spoke with Tara and reassured her that nothing would change between them. However, Tara told him she wanted to spend more time with him, and he agreed. So, she began going to his house on Wednesday afternoons instead of Fridays. Until then, Tara had her own room at home, but since the twins were coming, Mark told her that he would renovate the basement for her while her room became a nursery. Tara agreed. All of this happened without my knowledge because, by this point, my daughter barely communicated with me. She was so focused on being part of Mark's family that she hardly told me anything about her life. After the twins were born, Mark informed me that for the next 2 months, Donnie didn't want Tara to come over because she wanted to give the babies her full attention. I yelled that this would seriously hurt my daughter and make her question whether her father loved her at all, but he argued that he needed to be there for Donnie and the twins, and that they were his top priority. When I told Tara the news, she started crying and kept asking why Donnie no longer loved her. I did everything I could to comfort her. After a month, when Mark came to pick her up, Tara was excited. Later, she told me how adorable the twins were and how pretty her new room in the basement was. After seeing photos of her new room, I had to admit it was nice, even though it hurt a little that she'd given up her room for the twins. But if my daughter was happy, then I was too. Over time, Tara began finding excuses to spend more and more time with her father. She'd tell me how much she loved taking care of the twins, since sometimes Donnie needed a break. That really infuriated me, so I forbade Mark from using my daughter as a babysitter. He argued that that's how kids bond. I told him that his kids could bond without Tara having to change diapers and feed them bottles, a job not meant for a teenager. After some arguments, he agreed. However, when Tara found out, she screamed at me. She said that Donnie had told her I complained to Mark about it. Tara said she wanted to do it for the twins, but I knew she was desperately trying to fit in or be loved by Mark and Donnie by doing what they wanted. I assured her I had no bad intentions. I wanted her to enjoy her teenage years without being burdened by responsibilities, but what Mark and Donnie were doing was basically turning her into a babysitter. But she didn't care. That was the beginning of Tara always choosing Donnie over me. I never disliked Donnie, but it hurt every time my own daughter compared me unfavorably to her stepmom in every way. Teenagers can be cruel, and Tara was no different. I even recall one time when I got home from work and was sitting watching TV while eating, and she came out of her room and commented that I was turning into a fat cow these days. That took me completely by surprise since I wasn't even overweight to begin with. When I asked why she said that, Tara told me that Donnie had taught her that gluten makes people fat and that they weren't allowed to eat gluten at Mark and Danny's house. I explained that while that might be true, gluten isn't inherently bad and that she had no right to shame someone just because she didn't like it. As the days passed, Tara became a completely different person. In every conversation, it would eventually come out how Donnie did this or that, and she essentially felt like she was becoming a mini Donnie herself. She refused to go anywhere with me when it was sunny, saying she didn't want to get a tan, or insisted on skipping breakfast so she could lose a few extra pounds to fit into the bikini that Donnie had bought in a smaller size. She weighed herself every day and recorded her weight in a journal. She told me that Donnie said she had the potential to participate in beauty pageants if she kept up that routine. I was so angry when I found out. By that time, I'd never really had a conversation with Donnie, but I decided that was enough and finally reached out to her. However, Donnie saw no problem with Tara's behavior and said that she had simply suggested that Tara enter a beauty contest and that it wasn't her fault if Tara took it too seriously. I pointed out that Tara clearly saw her as a second mother and that she should be more careful with her words. But Donnie told me I should encourage my daughter to be the best version of herself instead of tearing her down. Her words really surprised me, and I told her to keep her strange ideologies to herself. Later, Mark called me to yell for talking to his wife like that. When I told him everything, he said he agreed with Donnie and that Tara shouldn't take Danny's advice so extremely. I yelled for him to open his eyes because it was clear Tara was being influenced, but my ex-husband clearly didn't care enough. I tried to talk to Tara and tell her she should enjoy her teenage years without worrying about trivial things like weight or tanning, but Tara remained adamant, shutting me out and rejecting any open communication. It was a painful realization to see my daughter drift away more and more each day. She wouldn't even come to me for decisions or general life issues. For example, if her school took her on a trip, she'd wait for her father to have him sign the form for her, even though I never had a problem with her going. It seemed she didn't see any real importance in having me in her life at all. I found myself pushed to the margins, just a bystander in her life. As a result, I was very depressed. But during that time, I met a man who changed everything. Henry and I met when I was at my lowest point. When we started dating, he saw how much Tara's behavior was affecting me and assured me that all teenagers go through a rebellious phase. However, things only got worse. Tara and I were constantly fighting. whether about her poor grades or not turning in her homework. And that's when Tara began blaming me for everything. She also kept saying that she understood why Mark left me for Donnie. That was a painful subject for me, and it broke my heart every time she said it in anger. I hate writing this, but I slowly started distancing myself from my daughter. When Tara turned 17 and was about to go to college, she and Mark came to me to discuss something important. I thought it was about college fees, and I was ready to tell Mark that I was prepared to pay half of the tuition. But instead, Mark informed me that Tara wanted me to give up my right to be her mother. I was stunned as Tara told me she'd been thinking about this for a long time and that she wanted Donnie to officially adopt her. I was so shocked that at first I thought it was just a bad nightmare. But Tara begged me, saying she loved Donnie more than me and wanted her to be her real mother. I asked her to explain her reasons, hoping to dissuade her from going through with it. Tara spoke honestly, explaining how she felt a stronger bond with Donnie and admired her stepmom's qualities and accomplishments. She said that if she became Danny's legal daughter, she'd also be entitled to part of Danny's inheritance, as that's what Danny's parents had promised her. As Tara spoke, I struggled to hold back my emotions. It felt like my world was falling apart around me, as if everything I'd worked so hard for was slipping through my fingers. Realizing that my daughter no longer saw me as her mother was a devastating blow that left me reeling with a profound sense of loss. Tara kept pleading with me, saying she'd always seen Donnie as her true mother and that I shouldn't fight it. Mark intervened, siding with Tara and telling me not to take it personally and to respect Tara's wishes. Over the next few weeks, I had to make a very difficult decision. Despite the pain coursing through my veins, I knew I had to consider what Tara wanted. I couldn't force her to maintain a relationship that she no longer desired, nor could I deny her the opportunity to pursue her own happiness. My parents tried to talk with Tara, but she refused to answer their calls. In the days that followed, I struggled with a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. I cried for the loss of the bond I once shared with Tara, mourning the daughter I once knew. Yet, amid the pain, I also felt a sense of resignation, a quiet acceptance of the inevitable. I cried constantly in front of Henry, who was the only one who stayed by my side. He, too, felt that what Tara was doing to me was incredibly cruel. With a heavy heart, I reluctantly agreed to Tara's request, knowing it would mark the end of a chapter for both of us. I won't get into the legal details, but it took a couple of weeks. In the end, Tara and I were legally separated, and Donnie proceeded with the adoption process. After that, Tara basically stopped talking to me. I can't even begin to describe how painful those days were. Until then, I had lived solely for my daughter, but watching her drift away from my life was excruciating. I had to admit that Henry kept me going and never abandoned me. He encouraged me to go to therapy and moved in with me to take care of me. That's why I left my job at that time. He took care of me completely. I was diagnosed with high blood pressure and started taking medication. Seeing Henry support me, I found a new reason to keep going. Gradually, I began to heal and stopped blaming myself for everything. He encouraged me to join his business just to stay occupied, and I did. Henry became the partner I never had but truly deserved. I threw myself into my work and my relationship with Henry, finding joy in life's little pleasures. For the last 6 years, I've worked alongside Henry to build his business, and he's made me an equal partner, giving me a seat at the table. We respect each other both professionally and personally. We got married and built a good life together. Never in my wildest dreams did I think that Tara, who hadn't even called me once in years, would suddenly call me. Yesterday, her unexpected call took me by surprise, stirring up a whirlwind of emotions I thought I'd long buried. She asked about my life and updated me on hers. I wasn't sure why she was calling, but I was glad she remembered me after all this time. At the end of the day, regardless of what any legal document says, she is my daughter, and I will always love her, no matter how much she has hurt me. I thought she had matured and wanted a relationship with me. However, then our conversation turned to her upcoming wedding. I was shocked to learn that my little girl was getting married. I couldn't hold back my emotions. Tara then told me the reason she was calling was because she wanted me to contribute to her wedding expenses. I was stunned when she said that Mark didn't have much money to offer, since his business was affected during COVID and never really recovered, while Donnie had refused to help much with the wedding because she wanted to save money for her twins. Tara continued, saying she knew I was doing well now that I was married to Henry, and that she occasionally spied on me through social media. So she wanted me to pay for her wedding because, basically, she claimed I owed her. All my feelings of joy and excitement quickly turned to sheer disbelief. I couldn't believe what Tara was saying. She was acting extremely entitled, considering that she was the one who left me behind. I told her politely that although I was happy she wanted a relationship with me, I wasn't just going to forgive and forget what happened in the past. I reminded her that she essentially wanted me to give up my rights as her mother so that Donnie could adopt her, and that she considered Donnie her real mother, so I didn't see why she needed my help in any way. Tara argued that I was still her biological mother and that it wasn't fair for me to have so much money now. She said that giving her a few $1,000s for the wedding wouldn't even be a big deal. I made it very clear that, although I wished her all the happiness in the world, I wasn't about to write a blank check to cover her wedding costs. She got angry and called me some harsh names, basically blaming me for abandoning her and saying I hadn't fought hard enough for her all those years. It was as if she was grasping at any excuse just to justify her actions, and our conversation didn't really go anywhere. She hung up the call in anger, and now I wonder if I should have helped my daughter with her wedding, a gesture I could easily afford. So, was I wrong for not helping my daughter? Before continuing, don't forget to subscribe. New stories every day. Update 1. I never expected this post to become so popular in just a few days. I've had hundreds of complete strangers contact me on Reddit, telling me that under no circumstances should I give in to my daughter's demands. When I first posted this, I felt so guilty. After all, she's my daughter. But seeing all the comments about how she's basically using me has made me question my own judgment. It's incredibly hard as a parent to stop loving your child, even if they no longer love you back. She will always be my baby, but I have to accept that she's not a little girl anymore and has turned into a demanding adult. Mark and Donnie haven't reached out to me, so I guess they have no idea that Tara is asking me for financial help. I'm not going to help her in any way, and I'm going to talk to Henry about it as well. Update 2. I sent a message to Tara, just like some of you suggested I do. I wrote, "Dear Tara, I want to express how much I appreciate you reaching out and sharing updates about your life. I love you so much, and I'm glad to know you're doing well. Regarding your requests for financial help for your wedding, I want to be honest about my position. While I understand your desire for support during this important moment in your life, I must respectfully decline your request. Since you never wanted me to be a part of your life, I think it's best that we maintain the current distance between us. It's important for me to prioritize my own well-being and set my boundaries. I wish you nothing but the best as you begin this new chapter, and I hope you can understand and respect my perspective. I sent this message this morning and will update here if she responds." Update 3. It turns out she saw my message but left me on read. I guess most of you were right. She really never cared and just wanted me to pay her money without any questions. Henry isn't happy with how Tara has been treating me, and he's asked me to block her so she can't hit me up with these unjustified requests anymore. I was a bit conflicted at first, but I think I'm going to do it now. And for those of you worried about my will, don't fret. Even though Henry and I don't have any kids, he has nieces and nephews, so we'll probably leave everything to them. I really appreciate all the support and advice I've received from the Reddit community. In the future, I'm going to focus on my own well-being and continue cherishing the loving relationship I have with my husband. Update 4. I finally got a response from Tara, and it wasn't what I expected. I haven't blocked her yet, though I'm still considering it. I was polite and courteous with her, but it seems she didn't learn a thing from me. Basically, she complained that since I hadn't been there for her in recent years, or been a good mother before, the least I could do was pay for her wedding. Otherwise, she wasn't planning on inviting me. She also mentioned that her husband's family was going to cover some things, like the honeymoon and other expenses, but that she really needed my money to cover her share. The worst part is that she went into further detail about why Donnie didn't want to contribute. It was because the money was meant for her kids, the twins, since she saw me as their stepmother, and that expense had to be handled by her biological father. Apparently, that led to an argument with her, and even with her father, because he took her wife's side instead of his daughter's. I was planning to respond, but I ultimately decided that it was best to just leave it all behind and leave her message on read. Maybe karma will take care of her. Update 5. You know what? I couldn't rest easy with that decision. That night, I went to bed and started thinking about everything we'd been through. How she treated me when I was still her mother, and how she repaid me for all those years of effort. So, I decided to respond. I told her that I'm still her biological mother, and that I was about to give her one last lesson she wouldn't like. A lesson that her adoptive mother probably never taught her. I began by calling her ingrate, reminding her how she always preferred her cool, rich stepmom over me. I told her that while I was teaching her about discipline and good values, she grew to hate me more each day. I reminded her how she broke my heart when she refused to be my daughter, and that I wasn't going to rush back to being her mother just because she needed money. I also made it clear that I wasn't interested in attending her wedding since I hadn't seen her in years and didn't even know her boyfriend, so I couldn't care less about the whole affair. Honestly, the only parts of that wedding that might have interested me were the party, the food, and the alcohol. I wasn't really invested in the people getting married. Though now that I think about it, it was probably going to be a gluten-free, very hippie event, so I wasn't sure if any of that would have appealed to me anyway. Finally, I added that if she had chosen to renounce me, then I was done with her too. I didn't need an ungrateful, spoiled girl in my life, begging her mother for money. And if she didn't want to pay for her wedding after all, then too bad. She bet on the wrong horse and lost. After writing that, I felt better, even though I still thought I could have said even more. But I believe that sums up exactly how I feel. Without a doubt, I cut all ties with her. I blocked her and didn't even wait for a response. I also texted my ex, telling him to take responsibility for his daughter and not to contact me anymore because I had no interest in hearing from either of them ever again. I blocked him too. I know some of you expected me to try to fix my relationship with my daughter, or at least that's what you said in the comments, but after all this time, I simply don't have any energy left for that kind of crap.